Good morning, eighth graders. It is Friday. Hopefully you guys have been able to check in these past couple days. I know this is day 3 of online learning. So far, I'm still super impressed how you guys have been able to get your work done. Most of you are doing it really early in the day, so I'm proud of you for not sleeping all day. Um, it's sorry if you can hear the bell in the background. That's my cat shaking his collar. So I'm just going to go right into what we're going to do today. Today should be a quick video. We're only finishing that last page in the bottom half of the third page of the War of 1812 notes. Next week, I promise I'll try to make this a little bit more interactive, do something a little bit different. But this week, since I only had 3 days, I just want to knock out these notes before I figure out how we are going to tackle the next set of notes on Monday. So for right now, just make sure you're doing that Bellringer on Google Classroom. Finish this video. Make sure your homework packet is done. I've had a good chunk of you turn it in already. Thank you so much. I'm going to be putting that on Google Classroom. Just to give you a heads up, all grades as of what we've done after we were in school are all going on quarter 4. So make sure that if you are not liking what your quarter 3 grades are looking like right now, look back, finish those assignments. I can scan you anything that you're missing. Just make sure that you're using that time. I will still accept everything for full credit all the way up until I think it's like March 24th. So make sure you're getting on that so I can put that in. Your grade will look better for quarter 3. And then make sure you're doing the exit ticket, the check in. Today I have you guys looking at a political cartoon, so something a little different. So the bell ringer for today on your Google Classroom, what do you think we have met, or what do you think, oh, I'm so sorry. Let me retry that one more time. What do you think we have met the enemy and they are ours means? So think about what events were happening when Oliver Hazard Perry sent these words to General Harrison. So this, if you need any help with looking at the context for this, it is on the bottom of the second and the top of the third page. So I'm just trying to get you to analyze a historical quote, kind of see the meaning behind it. So yeah, you can just write me a quick sentence about that, just reflecting on what we were looking at and what was happening during that time of history in the early 1800s. So I'm going to jump right into it. Hopefully you have your notes out and you're copying these down as we go. It should be a quick one today. We are starting at the bottom of the third page, looking at the Star-Spangled Banner. So after attacking DC, remember we left off yesterday with the British coming into Washington, D.C., and burning the president's mansion, the Capitol, and just trying to destroy every government document that they could lay their hands on. Now, there is a silent hero in this scenario, in this part of history, that I did not mention yesterday, and I should have. It was Dolly Madison, James Madison's wife, his second wife. Before she left, while they were being ransacked and things were being set ablaze, she grabbed any document that she could find, any historical document, and a oil painting portrait of George Washington before she left. So there are things that we still have access to and that we still can see today because Dolly Madison was able to grab it before she ran out of the White House mansion. So I think that's pretty important. Definitely a silent hero. Definitely doesn't, her name isn't brought up too much in history, but I think that there are some artifacts that we are able to see that are incredibly crucial to our America's history, because she ran in and grabbed them before they burned up. So that's pretty incredible. So going into the Star Spangled Banner, after attacking DC, the British head to Baltimore, where 13,000 U.S. militiamen were awaiting them. So at this point, they are ready for the attack. They're ready. They're on the defense for what the British is going to do. So these militiamen, remember that they might have been mighty in size, but they were not mighty in tactics and strategy when it came to military. But at this point, numbers were kind of more significant than strategy at this point in time. So the militiamen and the bombardment from Fort McHenry allowed for the U.S. to claim another victory. So remember, we were able to claim a victory on Lake Erie. We were able to claim a victory on Prophetstown, and again, we're claiming this victory here. Now, there was a young attorney named Francis Scott Key who was outside, and they saw these bombs go up into the sky, kind of like fireworks, and they saw this ammunition and all this fire. And but while it was all happening in the distance, they saw the American flag. So that prompted them to write a poem, which is now our national anthem, the Star Spangled Banner. Um, People have sang it very well, people have sang it very poorly. Christina Aguilera, for one, might have taken an interesting turn on when she sang this at some sports event. I don't know what it was, but I've seen a couple of you look at it, so I know know what I'm talking about. I should post that video with this. Maybe not. So in 1931, something that you guys might not know is that it took over 100 years for Congress to designate this to be our national anthem. So it wasn't until 1931 that this poem came in and became this huge national anthem that we see now during sporting events, large gatherings. People have taken multiple different musical um, like ways of approaching it. So it is definitely a big thing now, but that it wasn't until 100 years, over 100 years later, till it became our designated national anthem. So right here is a little bit of a map to show you kind of what we're looking at: Chesapeake Bay, Washington D.C., and then how British troops started going northeast up to Baltimore, and that is where they were met by 13,000 American militiamen. So just kind of giving you a visual context of a map, kind of what we're looking at. So we are looking now at the end of war. British General Provost led 10,000 troops from Canada into New York. Their goal was to capture Plattsburgh along Lake Champlain. So, Plattsburgh is a pretty crucial city along the shore. That was one of their biggest ports. That, as you can see at this point, while people are traveling by boat, anything that has to do with a major port is kind of either a opportunity for an enemy to come in or an ally to come in. So anything that's along the water where these boats can access is a pretty big deal. So that's what Plattsburgh was. The British would retreat following the American naval force defeating the British fleet in September. So again, another huge victory for America. This war is at this point lasting a little bit longer than people anticipated, but America was definitely holding strong, even with the British focusing all their military sources all their military resources on America at this point because they had defeated Napoleon in France. So, still a very great victory for America. So, after the Battle of Lake Champlain, the British decided that the war in North America was too costly and unnecessary. They were still licking their wounds from all the budgets and all the sacrifices that were made from the other war with France. So, at this point, they decided that it was no longer necessary for them to continue this fight with North America. They didn't think that there was any gain that was worth all of this unnecessary fighting, all this bloodshed. So, they came up with a treaty. So a representative from America and a representative from Britain came and met in Belgium. So kind of like a peaceful ground in between. So there was like no upper hand there, and they signed the Treaty of Ghent in December of 1814, making this the official the official end of the War of 1812. So, this is when this official war, the first war of the United States of America, ends in a treaty. So, a peaceful ending, even though I guess if you're tallying up victories versus losses, America may have had the upper hand. But again, I think that at this point, presidents had set the precedent to where if there was a peaceful way to end a war and there was a way to end it with a treaty that was more beneficial for the American people versus continuing to fight. So I think this is our last slide right here. Um, this handsome gentleman right here on the right is Andrew Jackson, who I'll talk about in just a second. So the Treaty of Ghent, signed in Belgium, was signed in December of 1814. But unfortunately, news of this peace treaty and the end of the war did not reach America, especially New Orleans and Louisiana, until about after January of 1815. So there was still one last battle that was fought even after the treaty was signed, just due to lack of communication or the inability to get the information of the treaty to the soldiers. So the Americans won this short, gruesome battle, killing hundreds of British soldiers. Now, this is a pretty interesting battle, this Battle of New Orleans, because um, in Louisiana, specifically in New Orleans, there was lots of cotton bales, which I know this doesn't sound relevant, but I swear it is, because in the South, the biggest cash crops at that point were tobacco and cotton. So military troops would hide behind these cotton bales, and these cotton bales were said to absorb the bullets that were shot from British soldiers. So making the British a much easier target for the American soldiers because the Americans were just shooting into the open air or the open field where the British soldiers were coming in, whereas the Americans were able to hide behind these cotton bales and kind of use it as a shield. So the Americans, again, definitely had the upper hand. Um, So that was one way that the Americans were able to kind of outsmart and have the advantage in this battle. So the Battle of New Orleans made Andrew Jackson a national hero and propelled him into the presidency of 1828. So obviously, the election of 1828 wasn't for a couple elections after James Madison was president, but this was one of those things we've talked about how the easiest way to become a president in this first couple elections of the United States of America is to become a war hero. So as this was the case with the first few presidents, it will be the case with Andrew Jackson. So we will talk about him a little bit later. So, for that being said, this was the end of our War of 1812 notes. We finished them in record time. I don't think we've ever been able to finish notes in 3 days. I'm so proud. So, real quick, I'm going to turn the slide to the exit ticket just to kind of offer a little bit of a further explanation to kind of what I expect. So, this right here is a political cartoon, and I'm asking, based on the political cartoon, who do you think these three men are? You should be able to identify them even if you can't read the small print. So obviously, they all have text box coming out of them, but based on what they're doing and based on what they're wearing, I assure you almost two out of the three men's names are in the notes, but the one that is not in the notes kind of looks very familiar based on what we've talked about previously. So I'm hoping that you guys are able to figure it out. If not, that's okay. Just write your guesses in there. Um, but I'll give you a hint that this is all pretty big historical figures around the beginning of the 1800s. So putting that aside, let me know who you think these are and kind of how you're representing or interpreting this political cartoon. So, other than that, I hope you guys have a great weekend. Stay indoors, stay healthy. Um, and keep getting your work done. So I appreciate that all the work that you've done for me for these past 3 days. And if you need anything, please email me. I will check my email over the weekend if you need me. All right, guys. Have a good Friday.